Chun Rue, you designed this disaster. The word struck the conference room like a hammer. I stood beneath the cold white lights of Meridian Urban Design's executive floor, staring at the giant screen behind the board table. There it was. My signature, my project code, my architectural drawings. And beneath them, photographs of a partially collapsed residential tower. 3 floors had buckled during construction that morning. 2 workers were injured. The city had already ordered an emergency inspection. Across the table, my rival, Lu Wei, lowered his eyes with the perfect expression of a reluctant witness. I try to warn everyone, he said quietly. The room fell silent. I looked at him. For one brief second, his eyes met mine. There was no concern there, only triumph. My fingers slowly tightened around the edge of the folder in my hand. Because I remembered this room. I remembered these faces. I remembered the accusation. And most importantly, I remembered how I had died. Not from the collapsed building. Not from prison. From the injection they gave me after the company's internal investigation blamed me for everything. A supposed panic attack. A supposed accidental overdose. A convenient ending for a convenient criminal. I had spent 3 years in disgrace before that night. 3 years watching my career disappear. 3 years listening to people call me a fraud. And now, I was standing here again. 3 years earlier. Alive. My heartbeat remained strangely calm. Lu Wei mistook my silence for fear. Rue, my department director said, his voice heavy with disappointment. You were the lead architect. How could these structural calculations pass through your review? I looked at the screen. The drawing displayed a load-bearing reinforcement detail. It looked almost identical to my original design. Almost. There was one tiny change. A steel support specification had been reduced. My eyes narrowed. That was the alteration that had caused the collapse. The same alteration that had destroyed my life in my previous timeline. Someone had changed my design, and I already knew who. Chun Rue, the director pressed. I slowly lifted my head. I need to see the original files. Lu Wei immediately interrupted. We already checked them. His answer came too quickly. I turned toward him. Did you? He froze. Only for half a second. Then he smiled. Of course. I nodded. Then there shouldn't be a problem. The director frowned. What does that mean? It means, I said, closing my folder, I accept responsibility for the work that carries my signature. Several executives exchanged glances. Lu Wei's expression brightened. He thought I was surrendering. In my previous life, I had fought desperately. I had shouted. I had accused Lu Wei. I had begged the executives to believe me. And every time I presented evidence, something happened. A file disappeared. A witness changed his statement. A security recording became corrupted. My own assistant testified against me. I had been too angry to understand the truth. Someone had prepared everything long before the collapse. This time, I wouldn't make the same mistake. I stood. I'll cooperate with the investigation. The director looked relieved. Lu Wei leaned back in his chair. His lips curved almost imperceptibly. I saw it. That tiny smile. The same smile he'd worn when I was arrested. The same smile he'd worn when my father died from the humiliation of seeing his son's name dragged through the news. The same smile he'd worn when he took my position as Meridian's chief design architect. I picked up my folder. Then I looked directly at him. Congratulations, Lu Wei. His smile disappeared. For what? I gave him a calm look. You finally got what you wanted. I walked out before he could answer. Behind me, the conference room erupted into whispers. None of them knew what I knew. None of them knew that I had already lived this disaster once. And none of them knew that this time, I wasn't going to stop Lu Wei. I was going to let him finish what he had started. My office was exactly as I remembered it. The dark walnut desk, the drafting monitor, the small crack in the corner of the window, even the dying fern that my former assistant had complained about every Monday. I closed the door. Only then did my knees weaken. I sat down. For several seconds, I simply stared at my hands. They were younger. No scars. No hospital bruises. No trembling fingers from years of medication. 29. I was 29 again. 3 years before everything collapsed. A laugh escaped me. It wasn't happy. It wasn't sad either. It was disbelief. So I really came back. The words sounded absurd in an empty office. I leaned against the chair and closed my eyes. Memories came rushing forward. My father's funeral, my mother's silence, the courtroom, the headlines, Lu Wei standing beside the company's chairman, pretending to defend me. Then the final night, the hospital ceiling, the cold hand of the nurse, the doctor's voice. Mr. Chun, please relax. Then darkness. I opened my eyes. This time, I was not going to save people who had already decided to destroy me. A knock came at the door. I immediately composed myself. Come in. My junior designer, Gao Ming, entered carrying 2 coffees. He looked nervous. Senior Chun, put it down. He hesitated. Are you all right? I glanced at him. In my previous life, Gao Ming had been one of the few people who remained neutral. He hadn't betrayed me. He simply hadn't been brave enough to help. I couldn't blame him. Not anymore. I'm Phoenix. But everyone downstairs is saying. I know what they're saying. Gao Ming lowered his voice. Lu Wei told the technical team that he had warned you about the reinforcement issue last week. My expression didn't change. Of course he had. The lie had already begun. Did he show anyone proof? No. Good. Gao Ming stared at me. Shouldn't we defend ourselves? I looked toward the city outside. No. He blinked. No. Not yet. There was something about my voice that made him stop asking questions. I opened my computer. The project folder appeared. I clicked into the archive drafts. Most of the files were there, but one folder was missing. The revision history jumped from version 17 to version 19. Version 18 was gone. My pulse quickened. Exactly like before. I remember discovering that missing file only after the collapse. Back then, I had assumed it had been deleted accidentally. Now I knew better. Someone had deliberately removed it. I opened the server access records. The deletion timestamp appeared. My eyes narrowed. The file had been deleted at 2:13 a.m. 3 days ago. I checked the user ID. My breathing stopped. It wasn't Lu Wei's account. It wasn't mine. It belonged to Zhou Han, the company's chief compliance officer. I stared at the screen. That was new. In my previous life, I had never discovered Zhou Han's involvement. Perhaps this was the first crack in the future I remembered. I leaned back slowly. A different thought entered my mind. Maybe I hadn't returned simply to repeat the past. Maybe I had returned early enough to see what I had missed. My phone vibrated. One message. From Lu Wei. Don't worry. I'll explain everything to the board for you. I looked at the message for several seconds. Then I smiled. Go ahead. I deleted it. Because if Lu Wei wanted to tell the board story, I was perfectly willing to let him write it. The next morning, Lu Wei called a department meeting. He didn't invite me. That alone told me everything. I stood outside the glass conference room with a cup of coffee, watching him speak. 30 employees sat around the long table. Lu Wei stood beside the projector. On the screen was a polished presentation titled, Emergency Structural Review, Causes and Corrective Responsibility. He had prepared quickly. Too quickly. I watched him point toward a series of technical diagrams. The original design contained an insufficient reinforcement margin, he explained. I raised this concern during the preliminary review. A few engineers nodded. My former assistant, Sun Mei, sat near the back. She wouldn't look at me through the glass. I didn't blame her either. Fear made people choose convenient truths. Lu Wei continued. Unfortunately, Senior Chun was confident in his calculations and refused to modify the design. A murmur spread through the room. I took another sip of coffee. Then I walked inside. The room went silent. Lu Wei stopped speaking. Chun Rue. I pulled out a chair. Continue. His face tightened. You weren't invited. I noticed. I sat down. Please continue. The department director looked uncomfortable. Since you're here, perhaps you should respond. I shook my head. No. Let him finish. Lu Wei stared at me. Something in his expression shifted. He had expected anger. Maybe shouting. Maybe accusations. Instead, I sat there quietly. He swallowed, then resumed his presentation. After the incident, I personally reviewed the calculations and discovered several inconsistencies. He clicked to the next slide. My design, my notes, my handwriting. But something was wrong. The image had been cropped. The lower right corner was missing. That corner contained my handwritten instruction. Do not reduce the support thickness below 18 millimeters under any circumstance. Lu Wei had removed it. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because he was making the same mistake he had made before. He thought destroying evidence meant destroying the truth. But truth wasn't limited to one file. I had learned that lesson the hard way. The meeting ended with the board announcing an independent audit. As everyone left, Lu Wei approached me. His smile was controlled. "You're taking this surprisingly well. I've learned not to panic. You should be worried." "I am." He raised an eyebrow. "Really?" I looked at him. "Yes. For yourself." I shook my head. "For people who keep making decisions they don't understand." His smile vanished. "What does that mean?" "It means nothing." I stood and walked past him. He grabbed my arm. I looked down at his hand. He released me. "Chun Rue." I turned. "You've always been arrogant." "Maybe. You think you can survive without the company?" I looked around the conference room. At the Meridian logo on the wall. At the awards displayed behind the glass. At the photographs of projects I had designed. Then I looked back at him. "I don't need to survive the company." His brow furrowed. "I only need to survive myself." I walked away. Behind me, he didn't speak. That afternoon, I received a call from an unfamiliar number. "Is this Chun Rue?" "Yes." "This is Lin Xiao from the Municipal Construction Safety Bureau." My hand stopped over the keyboard. "Go on." "We've received the preliminary documents from Meridian. And there is something strange about the revision history." I leaned back. "What did you find?" "Someone submitted 2 different versions of the same structural plan." My eyes sharpened. "Who submitted them?" "That's the problem." She paused. "The electronic signature belongs to you." My jaw tightened. "But the submission originated from an internal account that doesn't match your workstation." I said nothing. Lin Xiao lowered her voice. "Mr. Chun, I'm asking you this unofficially. Did someone access your account?" "Yes." The answer came instantly. "Can you prove it?" "Not yet." "Then find the proof." The line went silent. I stared at the phone. Not yet. Those words mattered. In my previous life, no one had given me time. They had decided I was guilty before investigating. Now, someone inside the Safety Bureau had noticed the discrepancy. That was the first unexpected crack in the wall surrounding me. I opened my laptop again. This time I searched deeper. Access logs, backup servers, cloud synchronization, old email archives. At 11:47 p.m., I found something. An automated backup had preserved a deleted attachment. Version 18. I opened it. The original reinforcement specification appeared on the screen. 18 millimeters. Exactly as I remembered. Then I noticed another file attached to it. A spreadsheet. Project approval payments. My eyes moved down the list. Several transfers had been made to an external consulting firm. The firm's name meant nothing to me until I saw the authorized recipient. Johan. I sat completely still. So that was why. The compliance officer had deleted version 18. He wasn't simply helping Lu Wei. He was being paid. But there was more. One transaction had been made 2 days before the design alteration. Another had been made the morning after. And a third. I stared at the amount. 500,000 yuan. The recipient wasn't Johan. It was Lu Wei. I slowly closed my eyes. The future I remembered had been wrong in one crucial way. I had believed Lu Wei was the mastermind. He wasn't. He was only one piece of a larger machine. My phone vibrated again. This time it was my father. "Rue," he said when I answered, "come home tonight." His voice sounded strained. "Why?" "There are people asking about the company." I frowned. "Who?" A long silence followed. Then my father said quietly, "Your uncle." My eyes narrowed. My uncle had been dead for 8 years in my previous life. But now, he was alive. And apparently, he was already involved. I looked at the recovered version 18 file on my screen. For the first time since returning, I felt something colder than anger. Curiosity. The past was changing. And somewhere in that changing past was the real reason my life had been destroyed. I shut down the computer. Tomorrow, Lu Wei would continue presenting my sabotage plans. Tomorrow, the board would continue believing his story. I wouldn't stop him. Not yet. Because I finally understood something. If I exposed him too early, he would run. If I confronted him too soon, the people behind him would disappear. So I would let him climb higher. Let him take credit. Let him gather witnesses. Let him believe he was winning. And when the entire structure finally rested on the lies he had built. I would simply step aside, then watch it fall. By 8 the next morning, Lu Wei had become the busiest man in Meridian. He moved between the executive floor and the engineering department with a stack of drawings beneath his arm, answering calls in a calm, professional voice. From a distance, he looked like the only person holding the company together. That was exactly how he wanted to be seen. I watched him from my office window as he entered the chairman's private conference room. He glanced up. Our eyes met through the glass. Lu Wei smiled. I didn't. Then I turned back to my computer. 3 unread emails were waiting for me. The first was from a board. Effective immediately, Chun Rue is suspended from direct supervision of the Riverside Crown Project, pending investigation. The second was from Human Resources. Please return project access credentials by 5 p.m. The third was from Lu Wei. I try to protect you. Please don't make this harder than it already is. I read it twice. Then I forwarded it to my private archive. Not because the message proved anything. Because people often revealed themselves more clearly when they believed they were being kind. A knock sounded. Gao Ming entered. His face looked pale. They took your access. I know. They also reassigned your team. I know. He hesitated. Lu Wei asked me to join his review group. I looked up. Will you? Gao Ming lowered his eyes. I don't know. You should. His head snapped up. What? You should join. But you'll learn more inside the room than outside it. He stared at me. Senior Chun, they're trying to replace you. I know. Then why are you letting them? I leaned back. Because they think my position is what they're taking. Gao Ming frowned. What else is there? My attention. He didn't understand. That was fine. Some things were safer when they remained misunderstood. I handed him a small envelope. Keep this somewhere private. He didn't open it. What is it? Copies of every drawing you worked on under my supervision. His fingers tightened around the envelope. Why? Because if someone asks you to sign something you didn't create, don't. He looked at me for a long moment. Then he nodded. Understood. After he left, I opened the drawer beneath my desk. Inside was a resignation letter. It was already signed. I had prepared it that morning. Not because I had given up. Because I refused to spend another year begging people to value what I had already earned. The old me had believed that staying was loyalty. The new me understood that sometimes staying was simply fear wearing a respectable name. At noon, the board held another meeting. This time, I wasn't invited. That didn't bother me. What bothered me was the sound of footsteps outside my office an hour later. Lu Wei entered without knocking. He closed the door behind him. You're making this difficult. I continued packing my desk. I haven't done anything. Exactly. He walked closer. That's the problem. I looked at him. Should I have screamed? His jaw tightened. You should have defended yourself. Against what? You know what happened. I know what happened to my design. His eyes flickered. For 1 second, the mask slipped. Then he smiled. You're very calm. I've had practice. Practice? I stopped packing. He didn't know what he had just said. I smiled faintly. Yes, practice. He studied me. Are you hiding something? I closed the drawer. No, it was the truth. I wasn't hiding anything. I was simply refusing to show it yet. Lu Wei came closer. Chenrui, you have a choice. I always have a choice. You can cooperate, admit the calculation error, and leave quietly. And if I don't, then the company will pursue disciplinary action. I looked at him. Will it? His expression hardened. You think this is a game? No. I picked up my coat. I think it's a building. His brow furrowed. A building. Everyone thinks the strongest part is the roof because that's what they see. I walked past him, but the roof only stays up because of what nobody notices underneath. He didn't respond. I left him alone in my office. For the first time, I saw uncertainty in his eyes. That evening, I went home. My father was waiting in the living room. He was 62, still broad-shouldered despite the silver in his hair. When he saw me, he didn't ask about the investigation. He asked something else. Why did you resign? I froze. You knew. I signed the letter. My gaze moved to the document on the coffee table. I had forgotten one thing. My father had always been better at reading me than I thought. You shouldn't have. I know. He looked toward the window. Then why? Because I don't want to spend my life defending myself to people who have already chosen a verdict. He was silent. Then he said, "Your uncle came this afternoon." I sat down. What did he want? He asked whether I still owned shares in Meridian. My expression changed. How many? My father looked at me. Enough to matter. That answer was too careful. What aren't you telling me? He sighed. Your uncle believes the Riverside Crown project is going to make Meridian very valuable. I understood immediately. The project wasn't simply about my career. Someone was positioning themselves around the company's future value. Did he mention Lu Wei? My father's eyes narrowed. No, Johan. He looked surprised. How do you know that name? I said nothing. He watched me carefully. Rue. Dad, did Uncle ask about my project? Yes. Did he ask whether I would remain at Meridian? Another pause. Yes. I stood. Then don't answer him anymore. My father frowned. Why? Because people don't ask those questions unless they already know the answers they want. He stared at me. You've changed. I looked toward the old family photographs on the wall. I had to. He didn't understand. He couldn't. Not yet. At 10 that night, my phone rang. Gao Ming. I answered immediately. What's wrong? His breathing was uneven. Senior Chun, I'm still at the office. What? The revised structural report just came in. I sat upright. What revised report? The one Lu Wei submitted to the board. Send it to me. I can't. My access is restricted. Then photograph it. Silence. Gao Ming. I'll try. 3 minutes later, my phone received 6 photographs. I opened the first, the second, the third. By the fourth, I stopped breathing. The report stated that the reinforcement reduction had been approved during my design review. But beneath the approval line was my digital signature. A perfect copy. Too perfect. I zoomed in. There. A tiny mismatch in the timestamp. The signature had been inserted at 2:17 a.m. for minutes after version 18 had been deleted. I immediately called Gao Ming. Listen carefully. Yes. Do not touch that report again. What? Because they want your fingerprints on it. He went silent. Then I heard a door opening behind him. Someone said, Gao Ming. His breathing stopped. I heard him whisper, Senior Chun. The call ended. I stared at the dark screen. For several seconds, I didn't move. Then I picked up my coat. I had spent the day telling myself that I wouldn't interfere, that I would observe, that I would let Lu Wei build his own trap. But Gao Ming was different. He wasn't part of the game. He was simply standing too close to the fire. I grabbed my keys, then stopped at the door. No. If I rushed back to Meridian, I would reveal exactly how much I knew. I took out my phone instead. One message. To an old contact I hadn't spoken to in years. Professor Han, I need a forensic review of an architectural file. Can you help me? The reply came less than a minute later. Send it. I smiled. The first ally had arrived, and I hadn't even asked for one. Professor Han's office was on the top floor of a university building overlooking the river. He was 68, retired from teaching, and had spent 4 decades investigating structural failures. When I placed the photographs in front of him, he didn't speak. He adjusted his glasses. Then he looked again. Where did you get these? Does it matter? Yes. Why? Because if this is what I think it is, someone didn't merely alter your design. He tapped the 4th photograph. They altered the history of the document. I sat across from him. Can you prove it? Not from photographs. What do you need? The original file. I don't have it. He looked at me. Then recover it. I smiled. That's what I'm trying to do. Professor Han leaned back. You haven't changed. I paused. I've changed a lot. No. He shook his head. You're calmer. His eyes narrowed. But you're still stubborn. That almost made me laugh. Years ago, he had been the professor who rejected my first independent structural proposal because I had relied too heavily on elegant mathematics and not enough on practical construction behavior. I had been furious. He had been right. After graduation, we lost contact. Until now. He pointed toward the photographs. Who is your enemy? I'm not sure. That isn't what I asked. I considered the question. Lu Wei. Is he capable of this? Yes. Is he intelligent enough? I hesitated. No. Professor Han's expression changed. Then he's not alone. That's what I think. He folded his hands. Good, good. If you had come here saying one man destroyed your life, I would have told you to go home. Why? Because complicated failures rarely have simple causes. He pushed the photographs back toward me. Find out who benefits. I nodded. Then he said something that made me stop. Chun Rue. Yes. Don't try to prove you're innocent. I stared at him. Prove what actually happened. Those words stayed with me as I left. 2 days passed. I didn't return to Meridian. Instead, I watched. Lu Wei appeared on business channels discussing the Riverside Crown incident. He spoke carefully. He never directly blamed me. That made him look honorable. I won't speculate before the investigation concludes, he said during one interview. Chun Rue is a talented architect. I hope the truth protects everyone involved. The clip spread through the industry. People praised his professionalism. I watched it alone in my apartment. Then I laughed. The old me would have smashed the television. The new me simply paused the video. There was something behind him. A project schedule displayed on a secondary screen. I zoomed in. The date. The schedule had been revised 2 weeks before the structural modification. The person who approved it. Johan. I opened another file. Then another. The pattern became clearer. Every time Lu Wei received praise for taking responsibility, Johan appeared somewhere behind the process. Compliance approval. Vendor selection. Inspection scheduling. Document archiving. He wasn't helping Lu Wei hide one mistake. He was controlling the paper trail. And that meant someone higher had to be involved. I started searching the company's shareholder records. Then I found the name. Chun Guodong. My uncle. I leaned back. My father's older brother. The man who had spent years claiming he wanted nothing from Meridian. Yet a private investment company controlled by his wife had purchased a substantial amount of Meridian stock 3 months before the Riverside Crown project received final approval. My phone rang. My father. I answered. Dad. Rue, come home. Did Uncle contact you again? Silence. Dad. He wants to meet you. Why? He says he has evidence. My fingers tightened around the phone. What kind of evidence? I don't know. Where? Tomorrow. His office. I looked at the documents spread across my table. Then I smiled. Tell him I'll come. The next afternoon, I entered my uncle's office. Chun Guodong stood beside the window. He was 58, immaculately dressed, with the smooth confidence of a man who had never needed to raise his voice to get what he wanted. He turned. Rue. Uncle. He gestured toward chair. I remained standing. What evidence? He smiled. You've become impatient. No. I looked around. I'm simply not interested in pretending we're family when we're discussing business. His smile faded slightly. Your father raised you too rigidly. My father raised me honestly. Honesty is expensive. So, is betrayal. His eyes sharpened. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then he placed a folder on the desk. I can help you. I looked at it. How? Admit partial responsibility. I almost laughed. For a crime I didn't commit? You misunderstand. He leaned forward. Your career can survive a design error. It cannot survive a conspiracy allegation. I stared at him. Who said anything about conspiracy? He went still. I smiled. Interesting. His expression hardened. You should be careful. I am. I picked up the folder. Inside were photographs of my original designs. Not the corrupted versions. The genuine ones. My heart beat once hard. Someone had obtained my private archive. I looked up. Where did you get these? That doesn't matter. It matters to me. He stood. Rue, you are my nephew. And you're threatening me. I am offering you a way out. I closed the folder. No. His eyes narrowed. You haven't even heard the offer. I heard enough. I placed the folder back on the desk. Tell Lu Wei he can keep my job. My uncle looked confused. What? He can keep my office. My title. My project. I turned toward the door. You can keep the company. I stopped, then looked back. But don't touch my name. His expression changed. For the first time, the confidence disappeared. Rue. I opened the door. He said quietly, You don't know what you're getting into. I looked at him. No. I smiled. But I know what you already got into. Then I left. That night, Professor Han called. I found something. I sat upright. What? The file you sent me. Yes. The digital signature isn't merely copied. What is it? It was generated from a certificate associated with your old workstation. My eyes narrowed. Impossible. Why? Because that workstation was replaced 6 months ago. Professor Han was silent. Then he said, "Exactly." I felt the room grow colder. Someone had retained the authentication certificate after the workstation was replaced. Someone with internal access. Someone who knew exactly how Meridian's systems worked. Then Professor Han added, "There's another problem." "What?" "The certificate was used after midnight. On the night version 18 disappeared." "Yes." My mind raced. "Can you identify the machine?" "Not yet." "Can you identify the network?" "I already did." He paused. "It's not Meridian's main office." I stood. "Where?" "Your uncle's investment company." I stared into the darkness outside my window. Everything suddenly connected. Lu Wei wasn't simply stealing my work. Johan wasn't simply falsifying compliance records. And my uncle wasn't merely trying to profit from corporate disaster. They were building a chain of evidence designed to make me the perfect scapegoat. But there was one thing they didn't know. I had already watched this chain destroy my life once. This time, I knew exactly where to cut it. My phone buzzed. A message from Gao Ming. "Senior Chun, I found a person who accessed your old workstation." I opened it. One name appeared. Lu Wei. Then another message arrived. "But there's something strange." I waited. A third message appeared. "He accessed it using your uncle's authorization." I slowly lowered the phone. For the first time since returning, I felt the shape of the real enemy. Not one man, not even three. A family member, a rival, a company officer, and perhaps an entire system built around the assumption that I would react exactly as I had before. I walked to the window. Below, the city lights stretched endlessly toward the river. In my previous life, I had spent years trying to prove that I hadn't sabotaged the Riverside Crown Project. This time, I had a different goal. I wouldn't prove my innocence. I would let them prove their guilt. And I would make sure every person involved remained close enough to the evidence when the truth finally surfaced. The first person to betray Lu Wei was the one he trusted most. I learned that at 9:12 on Monday morning, when Sun Mei appeared outside my apartment, carrying a paper bag and looking as though she hadn't slept in days. I opened the door only halfway. She stared at me. "Senior Chun, you shouldn't be here." "I know." "Then why are you?" Her fingers tightened around the paper bag. "Because I made a mistake." I stepped aside. She entered without another word. The apartment was quiet. Morning rain tapped against the windows, turning the city beyond the glass into a blur of gray buildings and headlights. Sun Mei placed the bag on the table. "I brought the original project notes." I looked at her. "What changed?" She lowered her head. "Nothing." "That isn't true." She swallowed. "Lu Wei told me to destroy them." My expression remained still. "When?" "3 nights ago." "What exactly did he say?" "He said the investigation team would request my files. He told me the old drafts would only confuse things." I pulled out a chair. "Sit." She did. For several seconds, she stared at her hands. Then she whispered, "I was afraid." "I know." Her eyes lifted. "You're not angry?" "I would be lying if I said I wasn't." Her face crumpled slightly. "I thought they would fire me." "They might." She nodded. "I deserve that." "No." She looked surprised. "You made a bad decision. That's not the same as being a bad person." She looked down again. "I should have helped you before." "Yes." The blunt answer made her flinch. "But you didn't." "I know. So why come now?" She opened the paper bag. Inside was a small black notebook. "My private notes." I picked it up. "What's in it?" "Everything I saw during the final design review." I turned the first page. Dates, times, names, meeting locations, and then a handwritten entry. March 14th, 11:30 p.m. Lu Wei requested Chun Rui's workstation access. Said it was for emergency revisions. I stopped. "Why didn't you report this?" She looked ashamed. "Because he told me you approved it." I turned another page. There were 3 more entries. Each one placed Lu Wei near my workstation. Each one occurred shortly before files were altered. Then I saw something unexpected. The final page had a name circled twice. Johan. I looked at her. What happened between Johan and Lu Wei? "I don't know." "Think." She closed her eyes. 3 weeks ago, I saw them arguing. "About?" I couldn't hear everything. But Lu Wei said the project had to move faster. Johan told him the inspection schedule wasn't ready. I leaned forward. What else? She hesitated. Lu Wei said, if Chen takes the fall, nobody will care about the schedule. The room became silent. My fingers tightened around the notebook. That sentence was more valuable than a dozen accusations. Because it proved something. The collapse hadn't been an accident they were covering afterward. They had planned for me to take the blame before the collapse even happened. I looked at Sun Mei. Did anyone else hear this? No. Did Lu Wei see your notebook? No. Good. I closed it. You'll keep doing your job. She looked confused. Why? Because if you disappear, they'll know you talked. She nodded slowly. And you? I'll do what I did before. What? I looked toward the rain-covered window. Nothing. She frowned. That sounds dangerous. It is. I handed the notebook back. That's why I'm careful. That afternoon, the Independent Investigation Committee arrived at Meridian. The company had prepared a reception. Coffee, documents, security escorts, and of course Lu Wei. He greeted the inspectors with a concerned expression. I've cooperated fully from the beginning. I watched from the lobby. One of the investigators, a woman named Tang Yu, glanced at me. You're Chen Rui? Yes. Will you attend the technical review? I wasn't invited. She looked toward Lu Wei. Why not? He smiled. Given the circumstances, we thought it would be better to keep the process impartial. Tang Yu's eyes narrowed. Then perhaps Mr. Chen should be present. Lu Wei's smile stiffened. I have no objection. Good. We entered the conference room together. For the first time, I sat across from him while an independent investigator controlled the discussion. Tang Yu placed 3 files on the table. The first concerns the original design. She opened it. The second concerns the modified version. She opened another. And the third concerns the electronic audit trail. Lu Wei's expression changed. Only slightly. But I saw it. Tang Yu looked at me. Mr. Chen, did you authorize the structural modification? No. Lu Wei immediately leaned forward. He did. Tang Yu turned toward him. Do you have evidence? I have his digital signature. She nodded. We'll discuss that. Then she opened the third file. The signature was generated from an authentication certificate associated with Mr. Chen's former workstation. Lu Wei relaxed. Yes. But that workstation was replaced 6 months ago. His relaxation disappeared. Tang Yu continued. Who retained administrative access? Lu Wei didn't answer. She looked at Johan. The compliance officer had been silent until then. I'll need to check the system records. Tang Yu's gaze hardened. You've had 3 days. Johan swallowed. We've been reviewing. No. Her voice was quiet. We're reviewing now. The room became tense. I leaned back. I didn't speak. Lu Wei looked at me. For the first time, I saw fear behind his eyes. Then he did something I hadn't expected. He smiled. There's a simple explanation. Tang Yu looked at him. Go ahead. The old certificate may have been retained accidentally. By whom? I don't know. Then find out. He nodded. Of course. I almost admired his composure. Almost. Then Tang Yu placed another document on the table. This is the access record from your investment partner's network. Lu Wei's face went pale. She looked at Johan. The certificate was used from an external network. Johan said nothing. Tang Yu turned toward me. The external network belongs to a company called Hanrui Capital. I watched my uncle's name appear on screen. Lu Wei's breathing changed. I remained still. Then Tang Yu asked a question that finally cracked the room. Mr. Lu, why was your user credential used to access Mr. Chen's old workstation through a network controlled by Hanrui Capital? Silence. Lu Wei looked at Johan. Johan looked at the table. And I said nothing. Because I already knew the answer. They were going to blame each other. And when people who had built a lie together began protecting themselves separately, the truth usually appeared between their words. The investigation lasted 4 hours. By the end, Lu Wei had stopped smiling. Johan had stopped speaking. And Tang Yu had filled an entire notebook. I sat quietly through all of it. When she finally closed the last file, she looked at me. Mr. Chen. Yes. Did you know about the external network? No. That was technically true. I had discovered it through Professor Han's analysis. But I hadn't known it before this investigation. She studied my face. You seem remarkably calm. I've already lost everything once. She paused. What? I looked at the documents. Fear becomes less useful after that. She didn't respond. Instead, she turned toward Lu Wei. Mr. Liu, we'll need your personal device. His face tightened. Why? To compare your local access history with the company records. My phone. Your laptop as well. He hesitated, then nodded. Fine. The meeting ended. As everyone stood, Johan approached me. His voice was low. You should stop. I looked at him. Stop what? No. His jaw tightened. People who investigate too much don't always like what they find. I smiled faintly. Neither do people who hide too much. He stared at me, then walked away. I watched him leave. A threat. Weak, but revealing. Someone was nervous. That meant the pressure was working. 2 days later, something unexpected happened. Meridian's largest investor froze a scheduled payment on the Riverside Crown project. The reason was simple. The investor's legal team had discovered inconsistencies in the structural approval records. Construction stopped. Contractors demanded clarification. The project's financing came under review. And suddenly, the same people who had been calling me incompetent began calling me. My phone rang 27 times that day. I answered none of them. That evening, my father called. Rue. Yes. Your uncle wants to see you. Again. He says it's urgent. I don't think urgency is my problem. My father sighed. Rue, whatever you're doing, be careful. I was silent. Then he said something unexpected. Your uncle is afraid. I looked out the window. Good. Rue, I won't hurt him. That isn't what I'm worried about. I closed my eyes. What are you worried about? That you might become like him. The words stayed with me. After the call ended, I sat alone for a long time. My father was right about one thing. Revenge could become another prison. I didn't want Lu Wei's life. I didn't want my uncle's money. I didn't even want Meridian anymore. I wanted my name back. Nothing more. That realization changed something inside me. The next morning, I called Tang Yu. I have something for you. What? An archived payment record. Where did you get it? Does the source matter? Yes. I smiled. Then write down Professor Han's name. That afternoon, Professor Han submitted a formal technical statement. It was devastating. It demonstrated that my original structural design was sound. The modified version was not. But he didn't stop there. Using metadata recovered from the files, he established that the modification occurred after my design review. More importantly, the person who created the altered file had used a workstation outside my department. The evidence pointed toward the compliance division. Johan was summoned. He arrived furious. This is absurd. Tang Yu placed the report in front of him. You're saying the forensic analysis is wrong? Yes. Then explain this. She pushed a document toward him. A payment record. His company account had received 3 transfers from a consulting firm hired by Hanrui Capital. Johan's face drained of color. I provided consulting services. For what? Compliance. Why were you paid privately? He didn't answer. Tang Yu leaned back. You've been given one opportunity to explain. He looked toward Lu Wei. Lu Wei wouldn't meet his eyes. That was the moment Johan understood. He was alone. His voice became bitter. Ask Lu Wei. Lu Wei snapped his head up. Don't involve me. You told me everything was covered. I never told you to alter anything. The room fell silent. I looked down at the table. There was the crack. Johan realized what he'd said. Lu Wei realized what he'd said. Tang Yu simply wrote something down. And she looked at me. Mr. Chun, did you hear that? Yes. Anything else? I shook my head. No. She studied me. You could have accused them yourself. I don't need to. Why? I looked at Lu Wei. Because they seemed capable of doing it for me. His face turned white. That evening, I finally returned to Meridian. Not as an employee, as a shareholder. The boardroom doors opened. Every executive inside looked toward me. The chairman stood. Chun Rue. Chairman, you resigned. Yes. Then why are you here? I placed a document on the table. Because I still own 12% of this company. The room went silent. My uncle was there. So was Lu Wei. So was Johan. I looked at each of them. I decided to exercise my shareholder rights. My uncle's face hardened. You don't understand corporate governance. I understand enough. The chairman frowned. What do you want? Nothing. He looked confused. Then why come? I pulled out a chair. I want to watch. Lu Wei's expression twisted. Watch what? The investigation. I looked at him calmly. The truth. My uncle stood. This is childish. I turned toward him. No. My voice remained quiet. What's childish is believing you can destroy someone's life and expect them to remain desperate for your approval. Nobody spoke. I stood. I won't interfere with your decisions. Then I placed one final document on the table. But from today onward, every decision involving Riverside Crown will be recorded. The chairman stared at the document. What is this? An independent oversight request. Tang Yu's signature appeared at the bottom. The chairman's face changed. I turned toward the door. Behind me, my uncle said, You think you've won? I stopped. No. I looked back. I think you've finally started losing. Then I left. Outside the building, rain had begun again. I stood beneath the awning and watched people rush through the street. For the first time, I didn't feel the need to look back. My revenge wasn't unfolding because I was forcing it. It was unfolding because every person involved had been given enough freedom to reveal himself. Lu Wei had lit. Johan had threatened. My uncle had tried to buy my silence. And the company had protected all three. Now, the consequences were no longer mine to control. My phone vibrated. A message from Professor Han. There's one more file. I opened it. This one may explain why your uncle invested in Riverside Crown before the design was even approved. I stared at the screen. Then another message arrived. It concerns your father's original ownership agreement with Meridian. My expression changed. My father had never told me he still had an ownership agreement. And if that agreement was connected to Riverside Crown, then the project wasn't just about money. Someone had been trying to take something from my family long before they touched my designs. I put my phone away. The rain became heavier. I smiled faintly. The truth had finally begun moving on its own. And this time, I wasn't chasing it. I was waiting for it to reach me. My father kept the original contract inside a metal box beneath his bed. I hadn't known it existed. When I asked him about it the next morning, he stared at me for nearly a minute before reaching for the key. You found out. I found out enough to know you kept something from me. He sighed. Your uncle asked me never to show you this. Why? Because I thought protecting you meant keeping you away from the ugly parts of the family. He unlocked the box. Inside were old company records, handwritten agreements, and a faded photograph of Meridian's founders standing beside an unfinished office building. He removed one document. This was signed by your grandfather. I unfolded it. The agreement was dated 24 years earlier. My grandfather had founded Meridian with 3 other investors. But the ownership structure contained a condition I had never heard of. If any founding shareholder attempted to transfer control of the company through a shell entity, the original shareholders retained the right to challenge the transaction. I looked at my father. Why does this matter now? He pointed to the final page. Because your grandfather specifically named Riverside Crown. I frowned. That's impossible. The land was acquired before you were born. My eyes moved across the page. A clause stated that the Riverside District development rights belonged to Meridian only so long as the original ownership structure remained intact. If control changed through undisclosed related party transactions, the development rights could be challenged. I understood. My uncle wasn't merely trying to profit from the project. He was trying to gain control of Meridian without openly buying the company. And the easiest way to do that was to make the company's existing leadership appear incompetent, drive down its value, and acquire shares cheaply. The collapse wasn't the goal. It was the weapon. I looked up. Dad. Yes. Did Grandpa trust Uncle? My father gave a bitter smile. He trusted him too much. I folded the agreement carefully. Why didn't you tell me? Because I thought it was finished. It isn't. No. His eyes met mine. It never was. That afternoon, the board convened an emergency meeting. This time I was invited. So was my uncle. So was Lu Wei. Johan didn't attend. He had been placed on administrative leave pending investigation. When I entered, everyone was already seated. My uncle glanced at me. You're enjoying this. I took my seat. No. Then why are you smiling? Because I'm finally seeing the whole picture. The chairman tapped his pen. Enough. He looked around. We have serious problems. A legal advisor, stood beside the screen. Riverside Crown's financing has been suspended. 2 contractors are threatening legal action. The Municipal Safety Bureau has opened a formal investigation into document manipulation. My uncle interrupted. This is temporary. The lawyer looked at him. No, it isn't. A new document appeared on the screen. Hanrue Capital has acquired approximately 8% of Meridian's publicly traded shares over the last 4 months. The room became silent. The lawyer continued. Several acquisitions were made through related entities. My uncle's face remained expressionless. That is legal. Perhaps. The lawyer clicked again. But the entities share directors. Everyone turned toward him. He slowly leaned back. Investment structures can be complicated. I spoke for the first time. Not when they all lead to the same person. My uncle looked at me. Careful. I smiled. You've said that twice. And you still don't understand. No. I placed my grandfather's agreement on the table. But I understand this. His expression changed. The chairman picked it up. What is this? An ownership protection clause. The lawyer immediately reached for it. As he read, the room became colder. My uncle stood. Where did you get that? My father. He stared at me. Then at my father, who wasn't in the room. You had no right. I laughed softly. My grandfather's contract doesn't belong to you. The chairman read the final clause twice, then looked at the lawyer. Can this invalidate a transfer of control? Yes. My uncle slammed his palm against the table. This is an old document. It's still valid, the lawyer replied. Silence. Lu Wei suddenly stood. I think we're losing focus. I turned toward him. No. He stopped. We're finally focused. His face tightened. I pointed toward the screen. The altered design. Then toward the ownership records. The shell companies. Then toward my uncle. The acquisition. I looked around the room. These aren't separate events. The chairman's expression darkened. Are you accusing your uncle of manipulating the company? No. My uncle's eyes narrowed. I continued. I'm asking why all the evidence leads in the same direction. That distinction mattered. An accusation could be dismissed. A question required an answer. My uncle had none. After the meeting, Lu Wei followed me into the hallway. You've gone too far. I kept walking. You should have stayed quiet. I did. He grabbed my shoulder. I stopped. His voice dropped. You think those documents will save you? I slowly turned. They don't need to save me. Then what? They save themselves. He stared at me. I removed his hand. That's your problem, Lu Wei. What problem? You keep thinking evidence exists to protect people. I stepped closer. Sometimes evidence exists to destroy lies. His face hardened. You have no idea what you're dealing with. I've heard that before. Then I walked away. That night, I received a call from Tangyu. We found the machine. I sat upright. What machine? The one used to access your old workstation. Whose? Your uncle's investment company. My heartbeat remained steady. And the device was physically located in an office leased under another company's name. Which company? She gave me the name. I searched it. A construction consulting firm. And its largest client. Meridian. I closed my eyes. The circle was complete. Can you trace the user? We can. Who? She hesitated. Lu Wei. I wasn't surprised. What about my uncle? We don't have direct evidence tying him to the device. Yet. She laughed softly. You're learning. I already learned. There was a pause. Then she said, there's something else. What? The machine wasn't used only to alter your files. I waited. It accessed Meridian's shareholder database. My eyes narrowed. When 2 months before the first Riverside Crown design was submitted. That changed everything. Someone had been researching ownership records before I even created the design. They weren't reacting to the project. They had chosen the project because of what it could unlock. I asked, what do they search? Your father's shares. My stomach tightened. How many times? 23. I stood. Send me the report. I can't yet. Why? Because there's one name in the access log that neither of us expected. Who? She said it quietly. Your father. The call ended. I stood motionless in the middle of my apartment. My father. 23 searches. I couldn't reconcile it. He had warned me. He had given me the contract. He had helped me. Unless. I sat down. Maybe he hadn't been protecting me from my uncle. Maybe he'd been protecting something else. Something he didn't want me to know. I went home before sunrise. My father was awake. He sat in the kitchen drinking tea. When I entered, he looked at me. "You found out." I stopped. The same words. The same calm expression. "Did you access Meridian's shareholder database?" His hand froze around the cup. "Yes." "Why?" He put the cup down. "Because I was trying to protect you." I laughed once. "Everyone says that." He looked tired. "I knew your uncle was planning something." "How long?" 6 months. My chest tightened. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I didn't have proof." "And you searched my records?" "I searched the ownership structure." "You searched 23 times." He looked away. I was trying to understand whether he could take control. Could he? Yes. "Then why didn't you stop him?" My father looked at me. "Because I needed him to believe I was still unaware." I stood silently. For the first time, I understood. My father had been playing a different game. Not against me. Beside me. He reached into a drawer and removed another envelope. This is what I found. Inside was a bank statement. Several transfers. All leading to shell companies connected to my uncle. But one transfer caught my attention. It had been sent to Lu Wei. "Dad, I know. Why didn't you give this to the investigators?" "Because I wanted to know who else was involved." I stared at him. "You should have told me." "Yes." His voice broke slightly. I was wrong. That admission hurt more than an excuse would have. I sat down. For several moments, neither of us spoke. Then my father said, "Your grandfather always believed the company would destroy our family." I looked at him. "Why?" "Because everyone who wanted Meridian wanted more than money." He sighed. "They wanted control." I folded the bank statement. "I don't want it." "I know. Then why am I still fighting?" He looked at me. "Because they came after your name." That answer was simple. And somehow it was enough. 3 days later, the investigation reached its final stage. Meridian's boardroom was packed. Executives, legal counsel, investigators, representatives from a municipal safety bureau. Even reporters waited outside the building. Lu Wei arrived wearing a dark suit. He looked exhausted. Johan came under legal supervision. My uncle entered last. He looked at me. "You've destroyed everything." I shook my head. "No." "What then?" "You did." The hearing began. Tang Yu stood at the front. "We have completed the forensic investigation." The room became silent. She displayed the original design, then the altered version, then the metadata, then the access records. One by one, the evidence formed a chain. The original file was created on my workstation. The altered version was generated later. My credentials were used without authorization. The authentication certificate was accessed through a machine located outside Meridian. That machine was controlled through a company connected to Hanrui Capital. Then came the financial records. Payments from Hanrui-linked entities to Johan. Payments from Johan's consulting account to Lu Wei. And finally, the acquisition records. Hanrui Capital and its related companies have been quietly purchasing Meridian shares. The purpose was clear. Depress the company's value. Create a crisis. Blame the chief architect. Force him out. Then acquire control at a discount. The room was silent. Lu Wei suddenly stood. "This is circumstantial." Tang Yu looked at him. "Then explain your access credentials." He couldn't. She displayed the server log. His login. His device. The exact time. The exact workstation. His face went pale. Then Johan spoke. "Lu Wei told me to do it." Lu Wei turned. "You liar." Johan laughed bitterly. "You think they'll save you? I never told you to sabotage the structure. You told me Qinrui had to take the fall. I said nothing about the collapse." The room erupted. I remained seated, not smiling, not celebrating, just watching. Because this wasn't my victory. It was the natural consequence of every lie they had chosen to tell. My uncle suddenly spoke. "Enough." Everyone turned. He looked at me. "You want the truth?" I said nothing. He laughed bitterly. "I planned the acquisition." The room went silent. But the structural sabotage wasn't my order. Lu Wei stared at him. My uncle continued. "I wanted the project delayed. I wanted Meridian's valuation to fall. I never ordered anyone to create a dangerous structure." Tang Yu asked, "Then why did you authorize the workstation?" He looked at Lu Wei. Because he promised me he could make Shinrue look incompetent without harming anyone. Lu Wei's face collapsed. My uncle continued. He said the worst that would happen was an investigation. I closed my eyes. There it was. The final truth. They had built a machine of greed and assumed nobody would get hurt. Then they discovered that consequences didn't care about intentions. Tang Yu turned toward the board. We will be forwarding the evidence to the authorities. My uncle sat down. For the first time, he looked old. Lu Wei didn't sit. He simply stared at me. Why? I looked at him. Why what? Why didn't you stop me? I answered honestly. Because you wouldn't have listened. His eyes reddened. You knew. Yes. Ow. I paused, then gave him the only answer he deserved. I saw enough. He laughed bitterly. You've been waiting for this. No. I stood. I've been waiting for you to stop lying. He looked away. Security officers approached. As they escorted him from the room, he passed close to me. For one moment, we stood face to face. Then he whispered, You'll regret not taking the company back. I shook my head. No. He looked confused. I already lost it once. His expression changed. This time, I don't need it. He was taken away. My uncle followed. Johan followed him. The boardroom slowly emptied. I remained beside the window. Outside, reporters crowded the entrance. Cameras flashed. People shouted questions. For years, I had imagined the moment my name would finally be cleared. I had thought it would feel triumphant. It didn't. It felt quiet. Almost ordinary. Tang Yu approached. You're free. I looked at her. Free? The investigation no longer concerns you as a suspect. I nodded. Thank you. She smiled. You did most of the hard work. No. I looked through the glass. They did. She understood. The villains had built the trap. They had supplied the evidence. They had chosen the victims. And in the end, they had stepped into it themselves. I walked out of the boardroom. For the first time since returning to the past, I didn't feel like I was running toward something. I was walking away. Behind me, Meridian's logo still hung above the entrance. Once, I had believed that logo was my entire life. Now it was simply a building. Nothing more. My phone rang. It was my father. Rue. Yes. Come home. I smiled. I am. And this time, I meant more than the apartment. I meant the life I had forgotten I was allowed to have. 3 months after the investigation ended, I stopped checking Meridian's stock price. It took me exactly 11 days to realize I didn't care. The first morning, I checked before breakfast. The second, before sleeping. By the third week, I had deleted the financial app from my phone. The company was struggling. Lu Wei had been formally charged for document falsification and unauthorized system access. Johan was cooperating with investigators in exchange for consideration in his own case. My uncle's acquisition scheme had triggered a separate corporate investigation. News outlets had moved on. The city had found another scandal. That was how life worked. It consumed people and then forgot them. I was beginning to appreciate that. I had resigned from Meridian permanently. Instead of joining another major firm, I rented a small office above an old bookstore near the river. There were only 4 desks. The heating system made strange noises. The elevator stopped between floors whenever it rained. And the sign outside had been painted by hand. Riverline Design Studio. I loved it. On my first morning, Gao Ming stood beside me holding a toolbox. This place is terrible. I looked around. It's affordable. The elevator is broken. That's why we have stairs. The windows don't close properly. Then we'll open them. He stared at me. You're serious? Yes. He sighed. I knew it. I smiled. You didn't have to come. I know. He set the toolbox down. That's why I came. I looked at him. He had changed too. The frightened junior designer who once followed orders without questioning them had disappeared. Now he asked questions. He challenged drawings. He disagreed openly. Sometimes he was wrong. Sometimes I was. Neither of us treated disagreement like betrayal anymore. That was something Meridian had never taught us. Our first project was small. A community library. No luxury towers. No investors. No television interviews. Just a narrow piece of land beside a public school and a client who wanted children to have somewhere quiet to read. The client was an elderly woman named Mrs. Sue. She came into the office carrying a cloth bag filled with old architectural magazines. I don't have much money, she said. I know. You read my proposal? Yes. Then why did you agree? I looked at the sketch in front of me. Because you care about the building. She smiled. Most architects care about the building. No. I shook my head. Most architects care about being remembered for the building. She studied me. You're different. I smiled. I hope so. Weeks passed. The work was peaceful, almost suspiciously peaceful. Then one afternoon, a former Meridian executive visited. His name was Fong Wei. He stood outside my office holding a contract. Meridian wants you back. I laughed. No, you didn't even read it. I don't need to. They're offering you your old position. I don't want it. Double salary. No. Your own department. No. He frowned. You're making a mistake. I looked around my small office. Gao Ming was arguing with an engineer over a drainage diagram. A young intern was sketching by the window. Mrs. Su had left 3 boxes of books in the corner. The office was noisy, unpolished, alive. I don't think so. Fong Wei looked disappointed. People spend their whole careers trying to reach the position you're rejecting. I smiled. I spent one life reaching it. He frowned. And I spent another learning that it wasn't worth keeping. He didn't understand. That was fine. He left. Gao Ming watched him disappear down the stairs. What did he want? To buy my freedom. Gao Ming laughed. Expensive. Very. That evening, my father came by. He brought dinner. You look tired. I am. Good. I looked at him. He smiled. Tired from work is better than tired from fighting. I laughed. We ate at the small desk. Afterward, he walked around the office. You built this yourself. Yes. Your grandfather would have liked it. I looked at the drawings on the wall. Would he? He liked people who built things that lasted. I smiled. That sounds different from Meridian. It is. He stopped at the window. You've become quieter. I was always quiet. No. He shook his head. Before, you were quiet because you were afraid that speaking would disappoint people. He looked at me. Now you're quiet because you don't need their permission. I didn't answer. He was right. I had spent years confusing silence with weakness. Now I understood the difference. Silence could be surrender, but it could also be control. The library project neared completion. One evening, I stayed late. The city outside was dark. The building smelled of fresh wood and paint. I walked through the empty reading room. Sunlight would eventually enter through the high windows. Children would sit here. Some would discover books. Some would make friends. Some might dream about becoming architects. I ran my fingers over the unfinished railing. Then I heard footsteps. Gao Ming entered. You're still here. So are you. He held out a document. The final safety inspection passed. I took it. Good. He smiled. Senior Chun. I looked at him. Don't call me that. He laughed. Sorry. I'm not your senior anymore. He nodded. Then what should I call you? I thought about it. Chun Rue. He smiled. Okay. There was something strangely comforting about hearing my name without a title attached to it. No chief architect. No accused designer. No shareholder. Just Chun Rue. A week later, the library opened. Mrs. Su stood at the entrance holding scissors. Children crowded behind her. She looked at me. You're sure you don't want your name on the wall? Yes. Why? Because the children will use the building. She laughed. Architects are strange. Very. She cut the ribbon. Applause filled the courtyard. I stood at the back. No cameras. No executives. No reporters. Just children running inside. For the first time in years, I felt something I hadn't expected. Pride. Not the sharp kind that needed recognition. A quieter kind. The kind that stayed even when nobody was watching. That night, I returned home and opened an old box. Inside was my original Meridian employee badge, my first architectural award, a photograph of my grandfather, and a resignation letter I had written before the investigation ended. I held the badge for a moment, then placed it back. I didn't throw it away. I didn't need to. Some things didn't have to be destroyed to be left behind. I closed the box. My phone rang. Gao Ming, you won't believe this. What? Riverside Crown is being demolished. I sat down. What? The municipal authorities found additional structural defects. The building is being dismantled. I was silent. Once, that news would have filled me with satisfaction. Now, nothing. No joy. No anger. just relief that nobody else would be hurt. Gao Ming continued. Lu Wei's lawyer says he'll appeal. He can. Your uncle's company is collapsing too. I know. You don't sound happy. I don't want people destroyed. He went quiet. Then what do you want? I looked at the box on my desk. I want people to stop pretending consequences are revenge. He laughed softly. That sounds like something you'd say. Maybe I've become boring. No. He paused. You become free. I smiled. After the call ended, I opened the window. The city was quiet. For the first time, the silence didn't feel empty. It felt like space. Space to breathe. Space to work. Space to become someone who wasn't defined by what had happened to him. I thought about the man I had been before my second life. He would have considered this small office a failure. He would have wanted the tower, the title, the applause, the approval. I wished I could tell him something. That losing everything wasn't the end. Sometimes it was the first moment you were finally free to choose what mattered. Winter arrived quietly. The river froze along its edges. The bookstore downstairs began closing earlier. Our office windows rattled whenever the wind came from the north. Yet Riverline continued to grow. Not quickly, not dramatically, but steadily. A clinic asked us to design a waiting room. A local school hired us to renovate an old laboratory. Then a community center approached us about a public housing project. None of them made headlines. All of them mattered. One afternoon, I received an envelope from the Municipal Construction Bureau. Inside was a certificate. The Riverside Crown investigation had been officially closed. The final report stated that I had not participated in the structural modification or falsification of records. My name was cleared. I read the sentence twice, then folded the paper. Gao Ming looked at me. That's it. Yes. You waited years for this. I know. And you're not going to celebrate? I smiled. I already did. When? This morning. He frowned. What happened this morning? Nothing. He laughed. That's your celebration? Yes. He shook his head. You really are impossible. I looked out the window. Maybe he was right. That evening, my father came to dinner. He brought an old bottle of tea. We sat by the window. You received the certificate. Yes. How do you feel? I thought about it. Light. He nodded. That is enough. We drank tea. Then he said, your uncle sent a letter. My hand stopped. What did he say? He apologized. I looked at him. Do you believe him? No. I smiled. Neither do I. My father reached into his coat. He asked me to give you this. A folded letter. I opened it. My uncle's handwriting was neat. Almost painfully neat. He wrote that he had been convinced control would protect the family. That he had believed Meridian would collapse without him. That he had underestimated the consequences. At the bottom was one sentence. I mistook your silence for weakness. I stared at it, then folded the letter. What will you do? Nothing. You won't answer? No. My father nodded. Good. I looked at him. Why? Because not every apology deserves another conversation. I smiled. That was the first time I realized my father had learned something too. We had both spent too many years trying to repair relationships that had been built on fear. Now we understood. Some doors could remain closed without hatred. A month later, I received another unexpected visitor. Lu Wei. He stood outside Riverline's office. He looked thinner, older. His once perfect suit hung loosely from his shoulders. I opened the door. You shouldn't be here. I know. He looked past me. So this is what you built? Yes. Small. Yes. He laughed bitterly. You always wanted something bigger. I changed. He looked at me. Did you? Yes. His eyes moved toward the library drawings on the wall. You really don't hate me? No. He seemed disappointed by the answer. I ruined your career. Yes. I stole your work. Yes. I let everyone believe you were guilty. Yes. He looked down. Then why don't you hate me? I thought for a moment. Because hatred would mean you still own part of my life. He stared at me. I continued. You don't. His eyes reddened. You got everything. No. He shook his head. You got the truth. I smiled faintly. The truth isn't everything. What is? Peace. He looked at me for a long time. Then he nodded. I don't know how to find that. I can't help you. He laughed softly. I thought you'd say that. He turned to leave. I stopped him. Lu Wei. He looked back. Don't make the same mistake again. What mistake? Thinking someone else's loss is the same thing as your success. His expression changed. Then he walked away. I watched him disappear down the stairs. I didn't feel victorious. I felt tired, but it was a clean kind of tired. The kind that comes after finally putting down something heavy. Spring arrived. The library received its first anniversary celebration. Children filled the courtyard. Mrs. Sue handed me a small envelope. "What is this?" "Open it." Inside was a child's drawing. A crooked building. A river. A sun much too large for the sky. At the bottom, in uneven handwriting, "Thank you for making our library." I stared at it, then laughed. "Who drew this?" Mrs. Sue pointed toward a boy near the entrance. He was hiding behind a bookshelf. I crouched beside him. "Did you make this?" He nodded. "Are you going to become an architect?" He thought about it. "No." "Why?" "I want to be a train driver." I laughed. "Then build good trains." He grinned. "Okay." When I stood, Gao Ming was watching me. "What?" "Nothing." "You're smiling." "So?" "I've never seen you smile like that." I looked around. The children were reading. Parents were talking. Sunlight poured through the windows. The building stood exactly as we designed it. Not perfect, but useful. Alive. I understood then that this was what I had been searching for. Not revenge. Not restoration. A reason to build again. That night, I returned to my office. The city lights reflected against the glass. I opened the old metal box one last time. Inside were the remnants of my first life. The Meridian badge. The award. The resignation letter. My uncle's apology. And the investigation report. I took out the report. Read it once. Then placed it at the bottom. Not because I wanted to forget. Because I no longer needed to remember every detail to know who I had become. I closed the box. Outside, rain began tapping against the windows. The same sound as the night I had discovered the conspiracy. The same city. The same river. But I was no longer the same man. I had returned to the past, believing I needed to defeat the people who destroyed me. I was wrong. They destroyed themselves. All I had to do was stop standing underneath the building they were determined to collapse. I turned off the office light. Before leaving, I looked once more at the drawings on the wall. Then I smiled. Tomorrow, I whispered. And for the first time, tomorrow didn't mean another battle. It simply meant another day. 5 years passed before I heard the name Riverside Crown again. By then, Riverline Design Studio had moved into a larger office. Gao Ming had become a partner. The bookstore downstairs had closed, replaced by a bakery that sent us free bread whenever we worked late. Mrs. Sue still visited every few weeks, and I had stopped keeping track of Meridian entirely. Until one rainy afternoon, an envelope arrived. There was no sender. Inside was a single invitation. Meridian Urban Design, 50th Anniversary Exhibition. I almost threw it away. Then I saw the final line. Special Exhibit. The Riverside Crown Case. Lessons in Structural Ethics. I stared at the paper. Gao Ming leaned over my desk. What is it? An invitation. To Meridian? Yes. Are you going? No. He smiled. Good. I looked at him. You didn't even ask why. I've known you long enough. He took the invitation. Then his expression changed. They're displaying your original design. I reached for the paper. He was right. Beneath the exhibition title was a photograph of my first Riverside Crown model. My name appeared beneath it. Lead architect, Chun Rue. For years, I had wanted my name restored. Now that it was there, I felt almost nothing. That surprised me. Gao Ming looked at me. You should go. Why? Because this time, you're not going there to defend yourself. I stared at the invitation. Then why? To see whether you still care. I smiled. That sounds dangerous. Probably. I folded the invitation. Fine. The anniversary exhibition was held in Meridian's new headquarters. The building was taller than the old one. More glass. More steel. More expensive than anything I had ever designed. I entered through the lobby. Nobody stopped me. Nobody questioned my identity. My name was printed on the guest list. That small detail affected me more than I expected. 5 years earlier, I had walked through this building as a suspect. Now I walked through it as a guest. The exhibition hall was crowded. Architects, investors, university professors, journalists. I heard someone whisper behind me. That's Chun Rue. He designed Riverside Crown. Didn't he get framed? Yes. I kept walking. At the center of the exhibition stood a large model of Riverside Crown. The tower had never been completed. Only the lower structure existed before demolition. The model showed what it was supposed to become: elegant, ambitious, beautiful, and dangerous because of what had been done to it. I stood before it for a long time. Then someone spoke beside me. "You never came back." I turned. Professor Hahn. His hair had become whiter. His eyes hadn't changed. "I didn't need to." He smiled. "I knew you'd say that." We stood together. "Do you regret it?" "What?" "Leaving Meridian." I looked at the model. "No, not even once." "Sometimes." He laughed. "That's more honest." I smiled. "I regret what happened to the people who were hurt. Not the building." "No." "Why?" "Because buildings can be rebuilt." I touched the edge of the display case. "People can't." Professor Hahn nodded. "Good." He looked toward the crowd. "You learned the right lesson." "What lesson?" "That architecture isn't about proving you're the smartest person in the room." He smiled. "It's about knowing what happens when you're wrong." I laughed. "I spent half my life learning that." "No." He shook his head. "You spent half your life learning that other people could be wrong, too." That was true. A reporter approached. "Mr. Chun." I turned. "May I ask you a few questions?" "If they're about the investigation, no." She smiled. "They aren't." I waited. "What do you think when you see this building?" I looked at the model. "Responsibility." She seemed surprised. "Not anger?" "No." "Not regret?" "Some." "Then what do you want people to remember?" I thought for a moment. "That a signature isn't just a name." She lowered her recorder. "What do you mean?" "When an architect signs a drawing, someone eventually builds it." I looked at the model. "People walk inside our decisions." The reporter was silent. Then she thanked me and left. Professor Hahn watched her go. "You've become philosophical." "Age?" "You're 34. "Exactly." He laughed. Later that evening, the exhibition director announced a special presentation. I wasn't prepared for the speaker. My uncle. His appearance had changed. His hair was almost completely gray. He walked slowly onto the stage. The hall became quiet. He spoke for 10 minutes. No excuses. No dramatic apology. He admitted his role in the acquisition scheme. He acknowledged that greed had distorted his judgment. Then he said something I didn't expect. 5 years ago, I believed Chinrue's silence meant he was weak. He looked directly at me. I was wrong. The audience turned toward me. My uncle continued. His silence was the strongest thing I had ever underestimated. The hall remained quiet. Then he stepped away from the microphone. No applause came. And, somehow, that was appropriate. When he returned to his seat, he didn't look at me again. I didn't approach him. Some wounds did not need one final conversation. After the presentation, I walked outside. Rain had stopped. The pavement reflected the lights of the building. Lu Wei was waiting near the entrance. I hadn't seen him in years. He looked older, but unlike my uncle, he seemed calmer. "You came," he said. "Yes. I thought you wouldn't. I almost didn't." He smiled. Still stubborn. Still observant. He laughed. For a while, neither of us spoke. Then he said, "I wanted to apologize." I looked at him. "You already did." "I wasn't sincere then." "I know." He lowered his eyes. "I was jealous of you." "I know. I thought if I could take your position, I'd finally become someone important." I remained silent. He continued. "I didn't understand that your position wasn't what made you important." I looked at the rainwater running along the curb. "Did you understand it now?" "Yes." "Good." He nodded. Then he asked, "Do you hate me?" I thought about the question. "No." His shoulders relaxed. "Thank you." I shook my head. "Don't thank me." He looked at me. "Why?" "Because forgiveness isn't a gift." "What is it?" "A decision not to carry someone else's actions anymore." He was silent. Then he smiled sadly. "I wish I'd understood that earlier." "So do I." He nodded, then walked away. I watched him disappear into the crowd. There was no triumph, no dramatic confrontation, no satisfaction, just an ending. And somehow that was enough. The next morning, I woke before sunrise. For several minutes, I lay in bed listening to the city. No alarms, no phone calls, no emergency meetings, no accusations, just rainwater dripping from the balcony above. I made tea, then walked to my study. On the shelf sat the metal box. I hadn't opened it in years. I took it down. Inside was everything that remained of the life I had once hated. The Meridian badge, the first award, my resignation letter, the investigation report, my uncle's apology, and one small photograph, me standing outside Meridian on my first day. I looked young, ambitious, certain that success meant becoming indispensable. I smiled. Then I put the photograph back. There was no reason to destroy it. That man had done his best with what he understood. He simply hadn't understood enough. I closed the box, then placed it on the highest shelf. Not hidden, not displayed, just stored. A chapter completed. At 9, Gao Ming arrived at Riverline. He threw a folder on my desk. We got it. I opened it. A contract for a new public project. A children's rehabilitation center. Large enough to matter. Small enough to remain human. I read the proposal, then looked at him. You sign? Not yet. What? He smiled. You always say we don't take projects without understanding who we're building for. I nodded. Then let's meet them. We spent the next 6 months designing the center. There were no skyscrapers, no luxury materials, no investors demanding dramatic photographs. Just practical spaces, wide corridors, natural light, quiet rooms, gardens, places where families could wait without feeling trapped. On the final day, I stood in the unfinished courtyard. Gao Ming joined me. Do you think it's good? I looked around. Yes. That's all. I smiled. What do you want me to say? That it's your greatest work. I laughed. No. He looked disappointed. My greatest work is the one I haven't built yet. He smiled. That's better. The center opened in autumn. Children entered through the main doors carrying backpacks. Parents followed. Doctors moved through the halls. Sunlight poured across the garden. I stood near the entrance and watched. A little boy stopped beside me. Are you the architect? Yes. Did you build this? With a lot of people. He pointed toward the garden. Why did you make the windows so big? So you can see outside. He thought about it. That's good. Then he ran away. I laughed. Gao Ming stood beside me. You know what? What? You've finally found the perfect client. I smiled. What? He didn't ask how much it cost. We laughed. That evening, after everyone left, I walked through the empty building. The lights were dim. The halls were quiet. My footsteps echoed. I stopped beneath a window. Outside, the city stretched toward the river. The same city, different life. I thought about the title I had once carried at Meridian, Chief Architect, then about the accusation, the investigation, the betrayal, the collapse, the evidence, the people who had tried to destroy me, and the strange truth that had taken me years to understand. I had spent my first life believing I needed to win, but there had never been a competition. Lu Wei wanted my position. My uncle wanted my company. Johan wanted money. They all chased something. I had chased their approval. That had been my real mistake. When I finally stopped chasing, I began living. My phone vibrated. A message from my father. Dinner tonight? I smiled. Yes. Another message arrived. From Gao Ming. Don't forget tomorrow's site inspection. I replied. I won't. I put the phone away, then turned off the lights. At the entrance, I looked back once. The building stood quietly behind me. Strong, useful, alive, exactly as it should be. Years later, people occasionally asked me about Riverside Crown. Students asked during lectures. Young architects asked during interviews. Sometimes journalists asked when they wanted a dramatic story. They always expected me to talk about betrayal, about revenge, about how I exposed the people who destroyed my career. I never told the story that way. I told them about responsibility, about documentation, about refusing to sign what you didn't understand, about asking questions before people got hurt. And sometimes when someone asked what I would do differently, I smiled. I would leave earlier. They laughed, but I meant it. Because the greatest lesson in my second life wasn't how to defeat the people who betrayed me. It was learning that I didn't have to remain where betrayal was considered normal. I had once stood in a boardroom while everyone blamed me for a disaster I hadn't caused. I had stood there angry, terrified, desperate to prove my innocence. When I returned to that moment, I made a different choice. I stayed silent, not because I was powerless, because I finally understood myself. I didn't need to stop Lu Wei. I didn't need to destroy my uncle. I didn't need to take Meridian back. I only needed to refuse to carry the consequences of their choices. They had built the trap. They had supplied the evidence. They had made the decisions. And, eventually, they had fallen into the structure they created. I simply stepped aside. That was not revenge. It was consequence. And consequence was enough. On the 10th anniversary of Riverline, Gao Ming gave me a gift. A small wooden model. I opened the box. Inside was a miniature version of our first library. I laughed. You kept this. You built it. So, you forget things. I ran my fingers over the tiny roof. What do you want me to remember? He smiled. That this was the first thing you built after leaving Meridian. I looked at the model. No. He frowned. What? This was the first thing I built after choosing myself. He smiled. Fair enough. We stood together by the office window. Outside, the city lights shimmered. The world had changed. So had I. I no longer needed a second life to prove I deserved the first. I simply needed to live the one I had been given. And when I finally closed the office door that night, I didn't look back. There was nothing behind me that I needed. Ahead was another morning, another drawing, another building, another chance to make something that would stand after I was gone. I smiled, then walked home. For once, tomorrow wasn't something I needed to survive. It was simply tomorrow, and that was enough.